And we've started broadcasting. So today is a relatively sample lesson. It just happens to also be about sampling. So we're still in the stage of the course where a lot of people are joining in, and it's so it will take us a little while before everybody's in the course. I'm also struggling to get OneNote going, so we're going to use the Microsoft OneNote notebook, which basically means that when we do like exercises, when you do an exercise in class, you just take a picture, just handwrite out everything, and then you'll just take a picture of your work and you'll put it into your OneNote notebook. So it's pretty convenient. Okay, so sampling so this is like the backbone of the way statistics happens. We talk about a population, and a population can be like everybody in the world, or it can be all the light bulbs that come off a production line, but it's everything that we're interested in understanding. Okay, but here's the thing. Say I wanted to find the average height of the world's population. There's a really good way to do that, and that is measure everybody in the world and then average the height that I get. And that's good because it's accurate, but it's bad because it takes too much time. So what we do instead is we sample, and there are a bunch of different ways to sample, okay? And so if you watch the video, you already know, like the nice English-speaking lady, English accent lady went over several types. First type is simple random sample. So simple random sample means that I've got a really good way of randomly picking people out of a population. So maybe I've got a big long list of names and I pick out all those people, or else I've got a lot of light bulbs and I pick out a certain number of light bulbs and then I measure those, and that gives me a rough idea, or perhaps a really good idea, of the average value or whatever statistics I want to get. That's a simple one, but you know, if you're trying to find the average height of everybody in the world, that is super hard to do, because then you have to go to the Antarctic, and you have to go to Greenland, and you have to go to the Sahara in order to get a truly random sample. So in other words, everything in that population has an equal chance of being included. The fact is, if it was the whole wide world, I would definitely not be able to do that. So simple random sample sometimes is just impossible. You just can't do it. There's a thing called convenience sample. So convenience sample, that's your favorite kind of sample. That's where you go to your friends and you say, I'm trying to convince my teacher that homework is bad. Do you think homework is good? And you ask your friends and they say, no, homework is bad. And then you go back to your teacher and said, well, I did this sample and 100% of everybody says that homework is bad. And you don't mention that, you know, you were just sitting in the cafeteria and you asked your friends that were sitting around eating lunch. So that's convenience sample. The advantage of the convenience sample is it's like really inexpensive and it's fast to do. The disadvantage is it's probably non-representative a lot of the time, but it can tell you something. You just have to say, yeah, I did kind of a convenience sample, and hope that that's appropriate for what you're doing. Systematic. Systematic, actually, this is the most appropriate for manufacturing processes, or I think the example was apples. So you have a production line. Systematically, you pull out every 10th car. Okay, if you were on an assembly line, and then you sample every 10th car for some quality aspect, like do the doors fit? So that's super systematic. Stratified. So in a stratified sample, say you're in a JK to 12 school and you want to know the height of the average height of the school. Say you have 200 people in high school and you have 300 people in the elementary school. Well, you'd choose 20 people in the high school and you'd choose 30 people in the elementary school. And so what you try to do is you try to get equal proportions in your sample as you have in the actual population. Cluster sample, once again, this is where you're going to try and conveniently narrow things down. So you might, if you wanted to know, you know, the average height of people in the school, you might pick a school board in Ontario and you say, we're just going to sample this school board because we can't do all the school boards. So we'll just pick all the schools that are clustered in this one school board and we'll sample that. So that's a way of narrowing down what the sample's like. Okay, once again, that's another way. Maybe it's a good way, but you might introduce what's known as sampling error by choosing a cluster sample. So if you happen to pick a school board where everybody was short, for example, might not work out. Voluntary is a lot like convenience. And so you've probably done these. You probably had to do them in elementary school where you went out and you gave everybody surveys and then like some people turned them back in. So you say, well, I passed out 100 surveys and 5 of them came back in. So that's a voluntary sample. That's where people voluntarily participate. Once again, that leads to a lot of bias. Like you don't get the opinions of a lot of cranky people or people who are busy if you've got a voluntary sample because they just don't do it. They don't hand it in. You also don't get the opinions of lazy people if you do voluntary because they just don't do the survey. Okay, and then this one is multi-stage. And so that just means like a cluster sample that is clustered and then clustered and then clustered again. Okay, so for example, if you wanted to know what was going on, what everybody thought in Canada thought about Justin Trudeau, for example, you would say, well, I'm going to choose Ontario and I'm going to choose BC. So you've chosen 2 clusters. And then within Ontario, you'd pick another cluster. You'd say, well, I'm going to do the 416 area code in Toronto, and I'm going to do the 519 area code in Ontario. So once again, you picked out 2 clusters within those original 2 clusters. And then you might say, well, I'm going to choose households in this neighborhood in Toronto and in this town in the 519 area. So you just, at multiple stages, you're choosing successive clusters. So multi-stage sample is really just a kind of multi-cluster sample. Okay, everybody ready? We're going to go to Socrative and ask some questions. Stratified, apparently I've skipped stratified. Okay, so yeah, I did stratified. Yeah, that's like elementary school, secondary school. Stratified, yeah, so Way to go. That's on the internet now. It almost sounds like I skipped something. Jeepers. Okay. Oh, so by the way, we're doing broadcasts and you're welcome to join us. We're going to typically do them at 1 o'clock. So you're welcome to join us for the class. We've done it before. People come and join. You can ask questions and participate. I am now going to, I'm going to start the Socrative exercise. And I'm going to share my screen here, I hope, anyway. Was that right? Okay. So I'm going to, okay. So hopefully this is going to work. All right. So the Socrative, you go to socrative.com. I think you do a student login. My room number is 249-717. Okay. And just do a random sampling here. People on the internet. Hopefully you're seeing a question that says, a radio show host invites people to call in and share their views. The real question here is, what kind of sample do you think that is? Is it simple, convenient, systematic? Is it stratified? Is the radio host doing stratified sampling, cluster, voluntary, or multi-stage? What's that? Oh, he's just, he says, here we are on the radio, and call in and tell me what you think of, I don't know, eating candy. What kind of survey do you think that is? Stratified. That sounds like it's stratified to me. Pretty sophisticated. We're almost there. Almost there. Simple. Okay, so ready? I would actually accept like it's voluntary, because people are just like they voluntarily call in. And the other one that I would accept is convenience, because it's convenient. You know, it could be either convenient or voluntary. Okay, definitely simple, but I should really have up here, because it's not really simple. It should be simple random. Okay, so simple random means there's been some simple way of randomly identifying the things that are going to be in the sample. Because simple just sounds like you invite people to be in the sample. Makes sense. Okay, let's go to the next one. Forget you, radio show host. Minister of Culture selects a sample of recent immigrants. So the proportion from each country are the same as each country of origin. So in other words, this is, say we had 100,000 people from India, and we had 40,000 people from Australia. We'd maybe pick 1,000 people from who'd immigrated from India, and we'd pick, what did I just say? 400 who'd immigrated from Australia. So what kind of sampling do you think that would be? Sounds pretty convenient to me. I did. I said it sounds convenient, but that could just be a trick. If you spelled it wrong, then it's just wrong. Okay. So ready? It's actually, this would be an example of stratified, a stratified sample. And so in a stratified sample, you're very conscious of trying to get the right composition in the sample as you have in the population. Okay. So if you've got 100 secondary students and 200 elementary students, you do a sample of 30, you'd get 10 secondary students and 20 elementary students in your sample. So you want it to reflect the population. So stratified is the one that they use when they're doing a lot of the Angus Reid polling. So for example, if you call people up in the middle of the afternoon and ask them about what they think of a change to the unemployment insurance, you're getting people who are unemployed, okay? And they're going to have a different opinion compared to people who are out working in the afternoon. So stratified is actually one of the more complicated representative samples that a survey company like Angus Reid might use. Okay, a reporter stops people on the street and asks them what they think of the new statue. Notice I'm really careful not to say what kind of statue it is. Okay, so reporter on the street stops people, asks them what they think of the statue, returns all the evidence back, says, guess what I found out about the statue today? Important stuff. So either of these, you could either say like it's convenience, because it's like you're just standing on the street and it's handy. You're just getting people as they come by. Or you could look at it as voluntary, because the reporter could ask people, and if they're not actually going to participate, if they don't want to, they just keep walking. Probably they start out not making eye contact, and then that's another way of not participating. Okay, school guidance counselor arranges interviews with every 5th student. And so the school guidance counselor would have this thing, probably called a sampling frame. So the school guidance counselor would have a list of names, probably alphabetic, and then just go through that nice sampling frame, and every 5th student pick that student. All right. 3 systematics out of 3. A lot of participation there. Yeah, that is systematic. So you've got a sampling frame. In other words, you've got a nice list of everything that's in the population, and you systematically go through and pick out which ones you're going to include. Okay, next. Statistician randomly selects 20 cities from across Canada, then 5 neighborhoods in each city, and then chooses 3 neighborhoods within each cluster. So what kind of, uses the word cluster. Do you think that's like one of those red herrings? Multistage, yes, yeah. This would be a multistage. So it's a form of cluster sampling. So it's a cluster within a cluster. In this case, it's like 3 clusters nested inside of clusters. Okay, good. Everybody gonna, yeah, big sigh of relief. Everybody passed. Hooray! Okay. Anyway, that's sampling. Pretty sample, huh? All right. So tomorrow, hopefully, we'll be back at 1 o'clock. So if you want to join, drop me an email.